Hey, welcome to Business Breakthroughs. I'm your host, Neal DiPentino. So glad you could be here with us today. We have a great guest that you're going to really enjoy today. She's a leadership coach. She's also an author. She wrote the book, Confessions from a Recruiter. So obviously she has something to do with recruiting. We're going to get into that just a little bit here in a bit. From Unicorn Recruitment and Career Services, please welcome Jaime Schmitt, AKA the Unicorn Coach. Jaime, welcome so much to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. So you have the unicorns behind you. You are, from what we were talking about earlier, kind of a lifelong unicorn collector, really.
I am, yes. So we'll talk a little bit about my fitness background, but I've always had a title of unicorn coach or recruiter pretty much since I started in the industry. So
Nice.
it seemed natural to name my business that, and people just kind of gift me unicorns now, so you can see the assortment of that behind.
I love it. Isn't it amazing? Like when you like find something that really works for you, people just kind of they all come out of the woodwork and they want to support you with that type of thing, and all these little trinkets and stuff. That's really cool. But really, the unicorn coach, there's a meaning behind that whole thing. We're going to get into that in just a little bit. But before we get into the business side of everything, let's find out a little bit about Jaime. Jaime, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I actually had a degree in psychology. I came out of college and fell into recruiting, which if you talk to any seasoned recruiter, they will tell you none of us thought we would ever be doing this. We just all woke up one day and found ourselves recruiting candidates and filling jobs. So found myself recruiting. I was recruiting in an agency format, so recruiting IT positions, high-level technical positions, and I was a psych major, so learning a new language. And then over the course of my career, I did a mix of agency and in-house. Obviously, now I'm on my own, but I was also a fitness coach on the side, and I coached the aerial arts, so circus.
Nice. So aerial arts, like climbing down things, climbing up stuff. That's so. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I'm really interested to find out, and I think our listeners would be too, is like, how does that translate, being a fitness coach into doing what you're doing right now?
So I was working both, had that passion for fitness and the aerial arts, and it was a hobby job, and was recruiting. And, I'm coaching men and women who couldn't climb the rope in gym class and had never ran or worked out a day in their life to climb 20, 30 feet in the air. And I could do that easier than I could get an IT manager to hire a technical professional. And I had to sit back and think, okay, well, what am I doing differently that I can get people to climb and build this incredible strength and have confidence in themselves, but I can't get people to hire, or I'm not getting people through job interviews when I was an agency recruiter. And really, it was the leadership aspect and the self-awareness and the emotional intelligence that I was coaching into my candidates. It was giving them the confidence that they could overcome these mental barriers. And it was all communication. And I looked back at how I was communicating with, I'm young, I'm out of college, and I'm working with IT managers and C-level executives that have 30 plus years more than me. And it was our communication, and it was how I was communicating to them that I realized I had to change what I was doing. I had to communicate at their level and get through to them. So by, enhancing my own self-awareness of what I was doing, I was able to coach them through the interview and hiring processes.
Okay. So you're talking, now again, you do both coaching for the person who's the potential employee as well as for that business and everything. And you talk about communication. So how did that work out? You talk about, trying to communicate in a way that they would understand and connect. So walk me through what that would look like.
So, through the course of this, I've obviously taken personality tests. I'm a giant leadership coach, so I could tell you my personality and communication style. But I learned how I was communicating, and I had to understand how they were communicating and what their pain points were and their challenges. So their challenges were, I need, an IT architect to design my infrastructure, or I need a database architect right now, and it was urgent and it was priority. And as a recruiter, you're taught to ask all of these questions that they didn't understand why I was asking the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't understand why I needed to know what the career progression was for this person because they were in the here and now. And my personality type is I'm thinking 5 steps into the future. So I'm thinking as a recruiter, I'm hiring you someone today that you need to work for you for the next 3 to 5 years. And then what does that capacity look like for them and for you?
Right.
So it was tailoring my approach to say, okay, here, I understand what you need from a technical aspect, and I know you need it yesterday, but here's why I'm asking the questions I'm asking, and here's what we're going to be able to do. And I was able to give them kind of that big picture by having the awareness that I wasn't communicating why I was asking the questions that I was.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, they're looking for somebody who has the skills to do the job, but the person who's looking for the job, they may possess the skills, but they're really also looking about their lives. I mean, their careers, and what does life look like outside of the job, that type of thing, correct?
Right. Yes. And you have candidates that's what they're looking for, right? They're looking for culture. They already know that they have the tech skills to do the job because they read the job description and they applied, right? So they're thinking about, here's where I'm going to be in the next couple of years. What does that look like for me? And hiring managers are thinking, here's what I need right now to stop the bleed in my organization.
Right.
So it was meshing those communication styles, and in-house, I'm coaching the hiring managers. Here's how you need to ask these questions, and here's how you need to think differently, so that we're not just focused on the here and now and the tech skills. We're creating runway, and you're creating retention in your team and career progression and succession planning by asking some of these good questions up front.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's super important for an employer too, because obviously you want to keep an employee. It costs more money to replace an employee than it does to actually keep them. So you want to make sure if you get good people, you're figuring out ways to keep them. So in the process, you're talking about communication. You're talking to the potential employer and how they can ask the right questions and how to formulate those questions and everything. Now, are you doing the same thing with that potential employee so that they can maybe structure their a presentation or their interview in a way that person would understand as well?
Correct. Yes. So with candidates as well, I'm putting them through a communication assessment, and we're doing some coaching so that they have awareness too of how they're communicating, and they're also learning how other people communicate by understanding how they're communicating. Right. So if you understand, I understand that I speak 5 years in the future. And I understand now that this person's asking me about my past or the here and now. I now know how to redirect myself, right, and bring myself back to the present. So I'm coaching on both ends. So what you see is really productive communication between two people that know each other, met each other for the first time in an interview, are spending maybe a couple hours max in technical skill sets that just typically aren't, your IT, your engineers, your supply chain, no one's really promoted because they're an excellent communicator, right? They're promoted because they're really great in their profession and their technical skills. So I'm helping them bridge that gap so that they can get past the tech piece and actually have really meaningful conversations about where they can move their organization.
Sure. And as an employee too, I mean, maybe in the tech field, you don't have to be, an orator or somebody who's a great speaker or whatever the case might be, but you still have to communicate what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it needs to be done. And because a lot of times the people who are doing the hiring, they only know so much, that's why they're hiring you, because you're the expert in that field, correct?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So what are some of the other maybe issues that creating that connection between a potential employee and an employer? What's some of the other things that you come up across when you're working with people?
One of the bigger challenges that I see typically when a company engages me, they're having trouble hiring. So, whether that's, a reputation on the street, right? Like you hear about that where there's companies that just, some teams or some companies have poor reputations, or just kind of the, maybe people aren't aware of them. They just have a lack of reputation, but also retention. So I see a lot of companies come to me when they're having retention issues, because they're telling me, we don't have succession planning because people aren't staying. So,
Right.
I'm engaged to help them hire, but then they're telling me I need this person for 3 to 5 years and I need future leaders, because they don't have that succession plan because of the retention issue that they're having. So in that case, it becomes a team effort, right? So now we're not hiring a candidate to fit the team. I'm coaching that entire team. So I'm working with that engineering team saying, okay, here's how everyone communicates. Here's the manager's leadership style. And here's the type of personalities that are going to do well with this leadership style. And here are some that aren't going to. So I'd say that, the reasons that I'm brought in are trouble hiring, trouble retaining, and lack of succession planning.
So I'd imagine then the retention part of it, that has a lot. I mean, you're talking about teams and everything, but I think that also has a lot to do with leadership too, and that leadership style and how the employees receive information and not only information, but just how they perceive the company as a whole. So you're working with that employer or that manager to help them work on their leadership skills too. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
I think, that's where a lot of us, we have a saying in Giant, like everyone else can see the broccoli in our teeth except for us, right? So that's one of those things where, having the unicorn title, I think it softens the blow when I have to give some harsh feedback, right? But no one's mad at a unicorn coach. But, it's that feedback of, do you understand that your communication style is micromanaging? And that comes from a place of you, not necessarily your employees. So because you're micromanaging, you're trying to protect yourself or you're trying to protect your team members. And where is that coming from? Is that coming from your leader? Is that coming from things that have happened to you in the past? Here are some of the issues that you're seeing. Employees aren't communicating with you, or they're leaving, or they're applying to other positions in the company because of how you're leading them. And I would say 99% of the leaders that I work with have no idea that that's how they were communicating. They just didn't know how to ask for information.
Do you think that most leaders kind of take maybe a generic approach in communicating with their teams, or do you think that they should be that kind of communication should be more individualized for each employee?
It definitely has to be individualized, especially when you look at just the age range that we have in the workforce right now. So we have the baby boomers down to Gen Z. Gen Z they're in the workforce, right? So that's one of the things I coach on is communication style and asking your employees, how do they like to communicate? And I was leading a global talent acquisition team, and I had people older than me, I had people younger than me, and what I discovered is the ones younger than me, my Gen Z recruiters wanted to talk to me. They wanted to call and have video calls, and they wanted to tell me things and ask me things, and I would have to tell them, I need you to follow up with me in email because I manage 8 of you, right? And you're all telling me different things. And so we met in the middle. I would get on a phone call and I'd hash things through with them. And then I'd ask them to summarize, and send me an email because I needed that physical reminder. And I think a lot of managers, they send out a mass blast email, or we have instant messaging now. And one of the things I coach on is, as a leader, it doesn't matter if you are coaching your best friend. If you send someone a ping that says, I need to talk to you, can you jump on a call right now? You've already raised their anxiety level. So it's just having that awareness of how you're communicating and asking your employees, how do you want me to communicate?
Right.
And write it down. Me too.
I love that. Yeah, I need to see it written down too. And I know we have a team here at our company I'm the oldest. Hard to believe, but but we have a lot of young people who are working with us too, and so we all have different kinds of styles and everything, and they have a tendency to really understand technology a lot better than I do. And just an example, I was having problems with my calendar, and it was a pretty simple fix, but I was like pulling my hair out, and as you can tell, and and I was like kind of going crazy and everything, and everybody's like, nobody's getting excited about it, but I am, and so it's like, well, this is what you have to do, and I'm like, well, can you write it down for me so if it happens again, I'm still waiting, so I totally get that, and I think that's because if you're looking at employers, okay, and not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, you're dealing with people from different generations. So generational type things, and we all communicate a little bit different. And so that's got to be a big thing in business now, to learn how to communicate with those different age groups, I guess.
Yeah. And then you add in, we're in a global workforce and we're remote now. And
Mm,
I was working with people in Asia and Europe and Mexico and Canada, and everyone has different cultural norms, right? So
mm,
understanding, and even if they're in your same country or your same city, there's different backgrounds and cultural norms, right? And understanding where that person's coming from and being able to meet them halfway. So, as a leader, you're not expected to be the end all be all, right? But you are expected to make those connections and bridge that gap and, help them meet you halfway.
right. Fantastic. This is all really good stuff. I hope that our audience is writing notes down and everything and passing them around. So that way, we're not going to wait for the video code. We've got the podcast. That's number one, but we want to write it down too, because these are great tips. So any other tips that you can maybe provide us with, maybe some examples of some of the people that you've worked with in the past and how you've overcome some of their problems and found solutions.
Yeah, I think, because I work on both ends, individual and, company wide, I'd say individually, I get a lot of instant reward, right? When people are struggling, people don't come to me because they've got 10 interviews lined up, right? They come to me because nothing's working for them, or
Nothing's happening.
right. They've been unemployed for a while and they're in dire straits. And, the biggest piece of advice that I give to them is you are not your job, right? So if you show up to an interview and all you can talk about is your job and what your technical aspects, but you can't talk about who you are as a person and how you approach situations and how you accomplish things, you're not going to get that job, because that's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what a hiring manager is looking for, right? So my successes there are, I like to tout, typically when I get someone who's dire straits and they're struggling, within a couple of weeks we've got interviews lined up, because we've changed their approach and we've changed how they're thinking about themselves. From a company perspective, it's those really hard niche positions. And so my favorite example is I had to help build an engineering team, and we needed 30 to 50 engineers in a relatively remote area of the state within a year. And I had to take recruiters that had never recruited before and teach them how to recruit and teach them how to understand technical capabilities and how to communicate that to higher level directors and C-level executives that are putting the pressure on my team to hire these engineers quick, right? And giving them the leadership skills and the ability to coach up. These are 25-year-old, 26-year-old professionals that are coaching seasoned C-level executives, saying, here's why this skill set's hard to find, and here are the concessions we need to make to meet these hiring goals. But I can tell you from a cultural piece, they meet X, Y, Z, because they knew how to communicate, they knew how to assess candidates for those leadership capabilities. And we met our hiring goals. We hired 30 plus engineers. I don't know if anyone has ever tried to hire engineers, especially in 2021 and 2022. It was not easy. And the team did it because they knew how to communicate and they knew how to redirect and reset goals and help the executives see the priority. So if the priority was to have people in seats that were a good part of the team and it was cohesive, they learned the technical pieces. They picked it up because they had that drive and that ambition and they wanted to be part of something.
That's, I think what I hear you saying in my mind anyway is that if you're going to be a leader and you're going to lead people and you're going to hire people, or even at the recruiter level where you have people that you're talking with who want a job and then people who are looking to do the hiring, you really almost have to be multilingual in a sense and be able to communicate up and down both ways.
And oddly enough, I do coach quite a few recruiters. Recruiters come to me and they're like, okay, I'm struggling with these hiring managers. Like, can you just help me as just a peer-to-peer professional? And so I kind of work my way into companies that way too, right? But that's the key aspect. It's being able to communicate down and up, regardless of your level, and not being intimidated by someone's title.
Right, exactly. Hey, look, we're getting pretty close to the end of this, and I can't leave without, talking to you a little bit about your book, Confessions from a Recruiter. Can you give us a little bit give us the skinny on that? What's that all about?
Yeah, so I've recruited for about 15 years now. So in a mix of in-house and in agency. So what I did was I looked at the job search process from a candidate's perspective, but gave you a recruiter and hiring manager perspective on it. So it is, everything from I need to find a job to now I've got an offer and I'm starting, and here's how I onboard and make sure I'm successful. And then I sprinkled some stories, some recruiting battle wounds that I have, some of the things that I've not done well, some of the things I've experienced. Hopefully some of the humor helps people that are struggling a little bit. And as you struggle and you try to find your next position and you're struggling with these interviews, I hope that people grab the book and know that no matter how bad you think your interview went, I've probably seen worse. So hold your head up high.
There you go.
And it's really just designed to help the job seeker really appreciate, the other side of it too. And I think if you know what the other side looks like, you're better equipped to, have those difficult conversations, or, keep chugging along when things get rough. You can kind of tailor your and land those interviews.
I love it. Yeah. Recruiters are people too, right?
We are. We are. Well, very resilient people.
I gotcha. So how do we find your book?
You can purchase it off my website or on Amazon. And I have hard copy, paperback, and Kindle all available.
All right. Fantastic. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with?
I think the thing that I always coach people is, besides the broccoli in your teeth, is just take a moment of self-reflection. And if you're having a hard time finding a position or you're struggling to hire, take a look and kind of reset your goals and priorities and really think about what your end goal is versus the here and now. So I think when we're looking at leadership, often we have that idea that we have to have, that 5-year plan. What can you do to make sure that 5-year plan actually happens, but you're still meeting your goals?
Fantastic. And Jaime, if our audience wants to get in contact with you to find out more about you or about your services, how do they go about doing that?
I am on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. Otherwise, my website is unicornrecruitment and careerservices.com. And email is info@unicornrecruitment and careerservices.com.
Outstanding. The Unicorn Coach, Jaime Schmitt. We do appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, that's our show for today. So thrilled you could be with us. Business Breakthroughs is sponsored by Titan Media Works. Check us out at titanmediaworks.com. That is work spelled WORX. And also check out all of our other great hosts on the Small Business Delivered Network at smallbusinessdelivered.com. Until next time, have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.